Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Chat About Death. There we go again, just for the sake of it. Yeah, let's chat about death. Let's just fade that out now. We're joined by another very, very special person, Robyn O'Connell, which is a funeral and wedding celebrant, also a author, a founder of a charity called Rebecca Jane Foundation, and also a funeral trainer and a general, just all really good chick, really. So let's put our hands together for Robyn. Yay, woohoo, yay, 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 yay. See, that's me. That's my sound effects for today. Lovely. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll just let you know that I paid him a lot of money to say those good things about me.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the piece of paper. I said, I just need another sip of water for the amount of titles that you have, but that's beautiful. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about obviously your career as, through becoming a funeral celebrant and obviously being an author in regards to writing the children book and other things that you've done too. What made you get into being into funerals? Like, what was it?
So my daughter Rebecca died when I was 25, and I, as many do, I went into fundraising. I went into learned grief counselling. I did all that sort of stuff. But when I did grief counselling, I found that it was really hard to let go of the families when they didn't. I was still worrying about them. I just couldn't kind of let go. So I got really interested in grief education and teaching people how to deal with people in grief. But, there was limited services around at that time, and I did start a company called Death and Bereavement Information Services.
Right.
And at that time, remember when, this is going back a long time now, remember when companies had to do professional development for their, I can't remember what it was called, but they had to do that. So I started this and started working in hospitals and stuff like that, trying to teach people about death, because I love things about death. So I just...
That's why you're on here.
I know, and I love talking about death. I'm the sort that you want at a dinner party.
Yeah, that's right.
Kill the conversation straight away. What do you do? Oh, I'm a funeral celebrant.
Yeah. Send Robyn in. Send her in.
You're a what?
Yeah.
And it leads to three responses. Yeah. First is they'll immediately change the subject. Like I work for the tax department or something. The second one is that they ask you all those questions that they've always wanted to ask, like if you're 6'6" and they make coffins 6 foot, how do they fit in? Or the most common, and I would say probably 90% of responses are, my mum just died last year, and then they go on to a big story about, because they know that I'm happy to listen.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk to them about death, and suddenly they've got this open ear. So sometimes when I'm travelling and I sit down to next to someone on a plane and they say, what do you do? I say, I'm a secretary. Because I know that it's just going to lead to this conversation. And, sometimes if I'm on my way to go on holidays, I don't want to think about work. So I just go, So I'm a secretary.
I'm a taxidermist.
Exactly. No, that'd lead to a whole lot of more questions and stuff like that. So I was looking for something where I could still use the skills that I had as a grief counsellor, but I don't mind talking, in case you haven't gathered. And I love telling stories. So this, celebrancy seemed to be the perfect.
Yeah.
I remember ringing a certain association, a celebrant association, and somebody answered the phone, and I said, I wanted to inquire about joining you as a funeral celebrant. And he went into this tirade about, oh no, you'll never get work. You'll never be able to make a living out of it. Nah. You're gonna get, this person's gonna move, and then they're not going to use you, and then new people come in and they don't know you, and And I went, oh my God, if that's encouraging me to join an association, I don't think I want to.
No.
So I just went, okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I'll just do this out on my own, you
Yeah.
know. So I just went. So in amongst all this, my aunt died. And the funeral was down at a Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. And they didn't have any money. So I said to them, look, I'll do the service for you.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this service. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I kind of done a fair bit of research and went, okay, I can do this. So I did it. And at the end of it, I felt fantastic.
Yeah.
I felt fantastic. And I remember my cousin coming up to me, sobbing in my arms, and I'm like going, I feel so good.
Look what I've just done.
And I'm just like, I'm so embarrassed because I'm feeling like really pumped.
Yeah.
And the funeral director said to me, give me your card. I'd loved what you did. Give me your card. And I said, I don't have one. I'm not actually a celebrant. I'm thinking about it, but I haven't actually done anything yet. And she said, as soon as you do, bring your cards down to me and we will use you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I go away, I'm really pumped, I'm going to do this and everything. Do you know, to this day, I've never done a funeral at that funeral company again.
Yeah.
But I believe in the universe, and the universe opened the door for me and said, you know, I can do that. So just off air a little while ago, we were talking about a beautiful, beautiful woman called Margaret McLean, and she was the one who gave me my first funeral.
Yeah.
And she was just an amazing woman,
she was,
and you know, a gorgeous person in the industry, and really did so much for new and up and coming celebrants, you know. And Marg and I became good friends, and it was just fantastic. So I did my first funeral, and again, I came out like going, oh, this is, you know, I felt like I had made a difference. You know, I felt like and she said to me, you'll be good.
Yeah.
20 years later, I'm still doing it. So, you know, the difference in those two people, and I so want to go to that bloke, because that bloke's still around.
Yeah.
I so want to go to him and tap him and say, do you know who I am? Because I'm fairly well known in the industry. Do you know who I am? I'm the person that you told would never make it.
No.
And that you never make a living out of it. Well, let me tell you, for 20 years, I've made a very nice living out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
and it must be that maybe he doesn't get any work, or not much of it.
Yes.
And having an attitude like that, you're not going to.
You're not going to. You know, it's something. You know, people don't realise. You know, when I as you said, I train funeral celebrants, and I used to do a 6-day intensive training. So they lived, ate, and breathed funerals for 6 days. I can't do it anymore. I'm just too old.
Yeah.
I can't do that sort of thing. I am looking at an online one, but I'm certainly not doing that 6 days of 16 days hours a day. You know, I'm too old. So, but I say to them, you know, this is not a money-making thing. You're not ever going to be rich. If you really want to do it well, you're not ever going to be rich.
Yeah.
But you'll be rich in ways that you can't ever imagine.
Oh, to tell someone's story, and even at the end of the funeral, you don't always expect any praise or thanks. Sometimes it's just the nod or the tear in the eye, but when you do get that, you know, that was the most beautiful service I've ever heard. Or, you know, I often, as a funeral celebrant too, I find that if people can walk away from that knowing something that they didn't when they first walked in the door, then we've told the story. Like, you're not going to be able to sit there, as you know, and talk for days on his life. But if you can give that overview, but it's got a little bit of character to it.
It's showing the essence of the person.
I mean, anyone can get up there, as you know, and read blah 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 blah, but it's got no connection, no feel to it. And I like connecting, and you do too. You connect with your audience very, very well, and that's why 20 years in the business, you should have connecting with you. But you know, what do you think has been the hardest thing in funerals? Like, what do you find as a celebrant has been the hardest? Is it trying to get information out of people, or is it, you know, is there a certain age group that you struggle with?
For me, my House of Americans said I could join the United Nations.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It's negotiating families so that they all get heard when you've got, because you've got so many different types of families these days.
Yeah.
You don't, when I started even 20 years ago, it was kind of almost every second one that was, either a second marriage or whatever or anything like that. Now it's unusual to have they were married for 61 years or whatever.
Oh, yeah, so different.
It's only that older generation that has got that. So I find that part difficult of negotiating to make sure that everybody's happy.
Having the split in families too.
Yes.
Like, mum and dad are split, so there might be 2 kids with them. And now we've got the new wife, new wife could have been like 15 years, but then they've had children.
That's right.
But the first ones are saying, well, I was here first.
Yes.
Negotiating.
It's that negotiation, and often I've spoken to someone on the phone. So my husband's heard one side of the conversation, then I'll say, look, I'll ring the other person, and then when I've spoken to the other person, I've kind of changed it and massaged it and everything, so that I've tried to get them come around to kind of almost thinking it was their idea.
Yeah.
And so, but the main thing I think is that people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can sit with a family and there'll be one member of the family who might not open their mouth for the whole time.
No.
And when I get up there and I say it was just as much the unspoken word as the spoken word that said volumes about the love that surrounded Joan. And you see that person's body rise because they feel like they have been heard.
That's it, yeah.
And that's, I think, we all fundamentally want to tell our story. They say we have to tell our story 30 times before it actually gets integrated into us. So that's why people will go and tell the same story all the time about the bereaved person.
Yeah.
So you'll hear the same things over and over again. It's their way of, melding it into their DNA, so to speak. So that's always challenging. When I started, I was, I think I was 46 or 47. And I used to think that anyone over sort of 60 had a decent life. Now that I'm 67. So they say that whatever your age is, plus 20 years is what you will think is getting older.
Yeah.
So now that I'm 67, all of a sudden people in their late 80s seem old to me.
Yeah.
Not the person in their 70s.
No.
A friend of mine was had a little accident. It was in the on the news, and she's 2 years younger than me, and they said an elderly woman. Right? And she rang me and she said, oh my God, can you believe that they called
not the
me
story about
elderly?
the accident, but now I'm elderly.
I'm an elderly woman, like it made me sound like I was this frail old thing, So, but given the reporter was probably about 20.
Yeah, that's right.
65 was elderly, So they say it's around that 20. So when I started, I kind of used to think, well, anyone who's kind of like older than me, that's okay.
Yeah.
The younger they get, the harder they get.
Yeah.
I remember it was about 2 years into my funeral celebrancy that I was asked to do my first baby's funeral.
Yeah.
And because funeral directors want to know that you're capable, that you're, they have to have that confidence in you. Yeah. And so the funeral director rang me and said, look, you can say no, because he knew I was a bereaved parent, so he didn't know kind of how that would go. And would you believe the first baby funeral that I did was somebody's little girl who was exactly the same age as my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Like exactly.
Yeah.
9 months, 3 weeks and 5 days.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like to the day.
Yeah.
She died from SIDS, which was what my daughter died from.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into that home and the mum was in a fetal position on the couch. And I said to her, just before we start, I just want to say, and she looked at me and she said, I know you're sorry. Everybody is sorry.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I said, actually, no, that's not what I wanted to say. Although, don't think that I'm not.
No.
But I just want to say that this is your time. If you need me to come back tomorrow or you get halfway through and you want to stop, that's fine. I will do whatever it takes to make it easier for you. I think I was there for about an hour before she actually started talking to me.
Oh, wow.
And then I spent the next 2 hours with her because once she talked to me, because sometimes you just have to spend that time to give them the confidence in you.
That's right. Build the relationship.
Yeah. And so she just wasn't, she was quite happy for me to talk to her mum who was there, but she didn't want to talk to me. And then eventually the mum started somehow, we started sort of talking about the way, and then she came in, she started talking.
Yeah,
she started telling me everything, but you sometimes just have to take that time. So,
for sure.
I remember coming out and sitting in my car and going, my head is pounding. How am I going to drive home? I had a migraine. I remember stopping on the side of the road and throwing up and then got home and went to bed, and I thought, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this service or not. But I remember saying to the mum, when we get to the graveside, hold on to her, because I remember standing at my daughter's grave going, how do you see the Italian movies where they throw themselves in the grave? I suddenly found myself wanting to do that. And when I think about it now, what I was trying to do was to stop her from being against what I saw as the cold, wet earth. Right? It was June, it was cold, and I wanted to lay down and put her on top of me so that she wouldn't be on the cold earth, I would be. So I said to the mum, when we get to that point, just hold her, And she did that lunge forward the same as what I did, except that I was so embarrassed, once I realised what I was doing. So it's, those sorts of things. So when, but of course, he loved what I did with that baby's funeral. And then suddenly other people wanted me to do baby funerals. And in the end, I had to say, I cannot do any more than one baby funeral a week.
Oh, yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
It's a totally different, emotionally, physically, everything is just totally different.
Yeah.
Because you can't, depends on the age of the baby or the child, there's only so much that you can talk about, especially if they haven't really had a life as such. No life experience.
But you see, I think you're wrong there.
Do
I
you?
think you're wrong. I think, that baby has experienced anywhere up to 9 months of knowing nothing except unconditional love.
That side.
But
that's
there's
true,
a story to be told in that of, the mum's experiences and the dad's expectations and all that sort of stuff. And so, and I remember one funeral that I did that it will always remain with me. The mother wrote a story, and she wrote a story from the baby's point of view. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And in fact, the funeral director that was with me said, I don't know how you got through it. And I said, I read it 25 times.
Yeah.
So I could read it without becoming emotional.
Yeah.
But then, I took that concept and adapted it into probably a less confrontational kind of thing. And, talk sometimes, if it's appropriate, about how you think the baby would have seen that time, I didn't have any rules.
No,
I
that's right.
I had plenty to eat and drink whenever I wanted it. I had I had total freedom. I didn't have to wear clothes, and you can kind of do some stuff with that. So, of course, you develop this reputation, and, of course, then everybody starts hearing about, she does amazing baby funerals, and suddenly, and I just went, no, I can't do this for my own health. I can never do more than, and that's a rule that I have stuck by for the last 18 years. So it was 2 years in. 18 years I've always stuck by that fact that I can't do more than one baby's funeral a year. And even though I do some for the Rebecca Jane Foundation, it's quite interesting when a baby dies and they didn't get to birth. Often the families will say, I don't want a funeral. What the foundation offers is that we will come back later and do a little service in their home for them.
Oh, wow.
Because, at the time they don't, it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then 6 weeks later they go, I really wish wish that I had have done something.
Yeah.
We will always do that, you know. So, and as a celebrant, I'd do that for any family. If they decided, no, you know, I didn't want anything for my baby then, and then later, you know, I'm a mum. I understand that.
Yeah.
You know, I understand the shock and everything that you can't think straight.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had to kind of temper that and just go, okay, one baby a week is what I.
Oh,
But it's what's really interesting about it was that it was I charged because somebody told me once that it's really important to put a value on what you do.
Yeah.
And so I always charged half my fee.
Yeah.
But on the way home from doing a baby funeral, every time I went shopping and I would spend exactly the amount that I was paid for that funeral.
Yeah.
And it was like I couldn't accept money for it.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, it's just weird things that your brain does, you know. I find it very difficult when anyone I know is having a baby. One of my best friend's daughters just had a baby, and we're both celebrants, and he'd done a couple of babies' funerals before that, and he said, why did they come in just now, you know? And I go, I worry about everyone. But what I don't see is the thousands upon thousands of babies who are born healthy every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? All I see is the ones that don't.
That's right. Yeah.
So for me, I see all the danger, but none of the joy.
No.
And now that this baby is born, I'm like just over the moon. I was beside myself with joy last night when I found out that the baby arrived safely, and Grace is now a new little person in our world. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it's like when you work in this industry, you know, I did, because of my background, I did a lot of sudden and unexpected death.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of people who went into hospital for a simple operation and didn't come out, right?
Yeah.
So for years, I just refused to go to hospital, you know, because, you know, the doctor says, look, this is a small procedure. It'll only be day surgery. And I'm like, no, because
just
I
letting
only
you know
knew,
that 2% die.
exactly, probably not even that, you know, but,
it's like,
you
just letting you know.
you just think,
Yeah.
you know, because we're surrounded by it, and I'm getting all of those ones,
Yeah.
you know, that I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have an operation. Oh my God.
I know.
And of course, I can tell you I didn't. So that's kind of, you know, my celebrant journey. And over that 20 years, I've done 2,500 funerals.
Yeah.
And I've loved every one of them. And the day that I heard you say once that something about, you know, coming away from a funeral and feeling good is what people should do, that they feel privileged. You feel privileged that they have allowed you to walk that very short journey with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, like, would you normally open your door to a complete stranger and tell them about the person that you love the most? Like, you just wouldn't. No. And yet we are strangers on the word of a funeral director who says we're good at what we do.
Yeah.
We are strangers coming into their home, and often they're telling us, you know, not so good things as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Dad was a bit of a thingamajiggy, and
that's a challenge, though.
How do you write someone? How do you write a story about someone? And we're only going by what we get told by a child or whatever, or their children, I should say, or even a niece, or, you know, oh, this was my experience, but he didn't love anyone, and he was a bit of a pig when he did this, and it is certainly a different way of being able to put a story together, and especially if they don't provide any information.
But the opposite is true too when they don't, you know, as soon as they start to say something difficult, everybody goes, no, we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
And I go, please talk about it. I might not use it, but please talk about it, because if you don't, then you sit there like I did at my father's funeral going, who in the hell are they talking about? Yeah. The devil incarnate had become a saint just by dying.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you know, my father's funeral was... Now, I don't blame the minister who did it, because he could only go by the facts that he'd been given, and I wasn't involved in it.
Yeah.
But like, I sat there going, give me the bucket, please give me the bucket, And
Yeah.
so that's kind of always made me try and delve that little bit more and sort of, what are the quirky things about them or whatever?
Yeah.
Because you can easily say things in a humorous way,
Yeah.
but people know, otherwise, because sometimes when people are all sitting there and they're all going, yeah, but what about, the fact that he was really, opinionated and
Yeah.
talked over people and all that sort of stuff, Whereas I would just say something like, well, you would all know that Bob was willing to share his opinions with you, whether you wanted to hear them or not. And everybody
Yeah.
would laugh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they go, yeah, he was a
Yeah.
bombastic
Yeah.
sod,
Yeah.
but
You're just coming in the back door a little bit and explaining it.
And
this
just
way
with
rather
humour.
than- Yeah.
And, you can, I remember a man who was really, really mean. He was so mean that he got a homeopath to go to his home because he was an old age pensioner and he couldn't afford anything and he couldn't do anything. And then the homeopath gets there and it's actually his cat that was sick. And he wanted him to fix the cat, but he wouldn't take it to the vet because they're too expensive.
Yeah. So we get the homeopath.
And so the homeopath charged him nothing and came and looked at the cat. And I just told that story and I said what the homeopath didn't realise was that this was a man who recycled kitty litter for months at a time, and so everybody laughed,
Yeah.
but the message got across.
Yeah.
So I think, the most important thing is in funerals is for it to be authentic.
Yeah, it
because
has
if
to
it's
be.
not,
Yeah.
everybody sits there going, yeah, but what about, it's
Yeah.
it's
There's
like
no
when,
point. Yeah. No point saying stuff that isn't related to them.
yeah. And
Like-
it's like when someone takes their own life.
Yeah.
I don't like the word suicide.
Yeah.
They chose to take their own life.
Yeah.
That's the way I approach it. And, and I say to families, how do you want to approach this? And they go, oh, we don't want to talk about it. And I go, okay, so, do people know how he died? Yes. Okay, so let's get the elephant out of the room because otherwise they're sitting there waiting for the eulogy to
Yeah.
finish,
Yeah.
still waiting for
For
something to
what
happen.
happened. Yeah.
And a bit later I'm going to share with you a verse that I often use for that. But, the important part is that you get the elephant out of the room, no matter what's happened, just say it. Just, you don't have to say it he chose to end his life.
Yeah.
There's nothing hurtful in that.
Yeah.
You don't say he committed suicide.
No, no.
Committed,
Yeah,
it's
it's
being
like
like
law. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He chose to take his own life. It wasn't the choice that others would make for him.
No.
But, sadly, he couldn't see himself as the beautiful person that everybody else knew.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a soft tone and manner with them rather than everybody sitting there going, oh, how are they going to talk about this?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of reasons why people take their own life. And, we tend to sort of think it's a really bad thing. And, if you look back at the Japanese, the kamikaze pilots who, that was an honour.
Yeah.
To take their own life or to commit harikari or whatever, that was an honourable thing to do. It's just the devastation for everybody else.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Why do you reckon that death is so taboo?
Oh, look, I think that we've grown up in a society that, during the war years in particular, there was so much death that I think it became sort of almost a let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like, let's not talk about the war, let's not talk about death, And I think
Yeah.
that stayed. My mother was a beautiful woman, but she believed that there was no place at funerals for children, no place whatsoever. So one of our family friends is quite a well-known family in Melbourne, and one of their family members died, and I couldn't go to the funeral. My mother went to the funeral, and this well-known person was about 16. And when we got, after I came back, I was overseas, and when I came back, I asked how the funeral went. She said, it was terrible. She said, such and such was just crying. He should not have been there. He's a child.
Oh, wow.
And I said, how old was he? And she said, 16.
Yeah, well,
Now,
no.
like, no, you know, and I said, Mum, I can't believe that you're saying that, you know, but I think that the reality is that it became sort of an adult thing to do.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very grateful to my aunt who died 6 months before my daughter did. Otherwise, the first funeral I would have gone to was my own child's.
That's it. Yeah.
And I am so grateful to my aunt.
It's sort of it's preparation for whatever will happen in the future. Not something that you wanted to go through, but at least you had an experience with it. Yeah.
And, you know, any child can go to a funeral. Any child, any age child can go to the funeral. The ones that are probably the more difficult are the 6 months to 18 months to 2 years, where, you know, they can't sit still, they can't do anything like that. But as soon as a child is old enough to sit and listen to a story, most of the time they are fine. And I had one where all the grandkids were up the front making an absolute ruckus, and all I said was, wouldn't Julie have loved this? She loved nothing more than having her grandchildren around making noise.
I remember you did one just recently for us for a very precious one, little girl, and she died tragically. And you actually brought the service in with, was it a verse or a poem?
Story.
Story of the
dragonflies to
and
water bugs to dragonflies.
You know what? I swear for the next week, that's all we saw was dragonflies and butterflies, white ones in particular. And it was actually on the end of that day when we came back, I left here at work, and every set of traffic lights, a white butterfly would just fly straight past my window. And I went, okay, so get to the next one, comes back. And then it would fly around my driver's side window. And I'm thinking that it was just amazing, that whole storytelling, that the connection with that meant something to me. So imagine all the other people that were at that funeral, next time they see a dragonfly or next time they see a butterfly or they see something else, they're going to think of her.
Absolutely. And the story for those who are listening is Water Bugs to Dragonflies, and it's by Doris Stickney.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful story. See, I think that we should teach about death before it happens.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So I wrote a book in 2004 called What Happens When You Die? A Child's Questions Answered.
Yeah.
And the reason that I did that was because I wanted people to teach children that death is a normal part of life.
Yeah.
You know, and that they have questions. The problem is that we wait until somebody dies and then we have to explain when the child's really upset.
Yeah.
You know, so I wrote this book in the hope that people would buy it before someone died and just tell the story so they knew what happened.
Yeah.
And then they could, you know, when it happens to them, they can deal with their emotions, not also learning something new.
I think you've experienced it too, or you would have probably done more of this than probably me. But, you know, when you go and see a family and you say, so how did you explain it to your child? Was it, you know, grandma's just fallen asleep? Which, you know, you think about that. Well, normally when you go to sleep, you wake up. Or she's gone on a holiday. Or she, you know, like how have you found that over your career? How those stories, have they all been fairly similar, do you think? Or do you think more people are starting now to tell it how it really is?
I wish we did, because to a child, the word dead, dying and death means nothing.
No, it's true.
It's just a word.
Yeah.
We're the ones that associate it with loss and pain and all that sort of stuff, you know. So I think that, you know, we just have to be honest and we have to say, you know, such and such has died, and that means that they can't, you know, they're not going to be here anymore. They're not going to be alive.
Yeah.
But they, you know, when you say going to heaven to a child is no different than going to McDonald's. You come home.
Yeah.
So it's really important that they get told honestly of what happens, that this is what we have. We have a funeral. And that's what I wrote in my book. So what happens next, and, you know, what's a viewing and all those sorts of things, so that, you know, any child, school child age can read it. And but I say to parents, read it beforehand, because you have to be comfortable with the questions that they're going to ask. That's the whole thing. But we shield them from it. Often I'll get there when it's been a tragedy and the children have all gone. They've all been taken to a park and given ice creams and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Let them be there. Let them be in the corner just drawing whatever.
Yeah.
A child grieves differently to an adult, so a child goes in and out of grief very quickly. Yeah. So one moment they'll be bawling their eyes out and the next moment they'll be saying, "Can we go to Macca's and get an ice cream?" And we struggle with that. Yeah. We struggle with that because, how can they be so upset one minute but that's childhood. That's what childhood is. We have moments all the time. So, but I say to families, look, if the child is old enough to listen to a story, let them come, because usually just the ambience and thing kind of makes them a bit in awe. Yeah. And so they tend to sit there and just listen. Yeah. The idea is not to get children to sit next to one another. No. That's when they will think. But if you have adults between them, they will normally sit there no problem at all. Yeah. So, as we saw in that circumstance. So, children, 3 years old, sitting there because they were all in awe of everything that was going on around them. So, but it's a really, it's a tricky area and it's an area, and it's only tricky because we're the ones that aren't comfortable in it. So when my son was little, he's 42 now, but when he was little, I explained death to him when I killed a spider. And we got a matchbox and we put the spider inside the matchbox. And I explained that we're going to put it in the earth now. Yeah. And it is going to stay there permanently. And
it ain't coming out.
And if there is this place called heaven where dead things go, I hope it doesn't go there, because I want to go there. And so I don't want the spider to be there as well, So, but generally, that's the way I explain it. So get the matchbox and something dead and bury it, and because most people will have their grandparents or a pet. Yeah. Or these are fantastic learning opportunities. But often with a pet, what happens is the parents go out 2 days later and get another one. So the child then kind of has this divided loyalty between, well, that was my dog all my life, and now I've got this new puppy, but, it's not the same. No. So we need to get comfortable. We need to get comfortable with each other, talking about death, talking about the fact that, what have you got planned? How do you see your demise? Everybody plans for their retirement. Nobody plans for their death.
No, that's so true. And I put a question out to social media, I think it was on TikTok, in regards to if anyone had the opportunity of knowing when they were going to pass or how they were going to pass. And a majority of people, it took them a little while to sort of think about it, because you don't ever question that. Like, no. If I knew when I was going to die, what would you do? Or how you died. Like, anytime you get chest pain, you go, I think it's now. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. No, it might have been the Indian that I just ate. I've got heartburn. But, I mean, even to the level of cremation and burial.
Absolutely.
Like, do you know what Mum wants? No, I have no idea. Well, you better find out, because imagine doing a burial when Mum didn't want to have this earth there, or the other one was that they don't like fire. So, and having to live with that, and finding a will or something later on that says, under no circumstances do you cremate me. I think that's the big thing when it comes to. I'm probably finding that there's probably 80% now cremation, and the 20% is burial. Yeah.
Apart from the fact that burial is so expensive.
Oh,
it's just crazy. Yeah. But my best friend wants to be buried, and her husband died, and he wanted to be cremated. Right. So they've interred his ashes into what will be her grave, and so there was a compromise. That's what you can do. Yeah. Like, people kind of think that you stuck with no options, but there are plenty of ways around it.
How would you feel comfortable in knowing that block of land, that plot, is where you're going to be. How would you see that now? Do you find that as a comfortable thing?
Oh,
Or do you find-
I do.
Yeah.
But I've got strict instructions with mine. You see, my husband has to die before me because otherwise he will wear his shirts for 2 days, and I ban that when I meet him. So he understands that he has to die, even though he's 5 years younger than me.
Yeah.
This is the rules, right? You know? And then his ashes are going to be kept. And then when I die, his ashes are going to be put in with me, and he's going to go around again. Right. And then our combined ashes are going to go into my daughter's grave.
Oh, wow.
Because he can't go in there. He's nothing to her.
No.
Right. You know, so he has to wait until I go.
Yeah.
Now, if I go first, my ashes will be put in there, and he said he'll just go in the rubbish bin. He's quite comfortable with that, right? So, you know, this is the plan, you know, but but that brings a really interesting point about who actually owns the grave.
Yeah.
That's a whole topic on its own.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
of how things happen like that. But I've picked my songs. You know, I'm having Once Before I Go.
Yeah.
That's from Hugh Jackman singing at The Boy from Oz.
Yeah.
And it says, "Once before I go, I want you to know I'd do it all again." But, you know, that's a whole topic in itself.
Yeah,
Funeral songs
definitely.
is just
Yeah.
really amazing. And it's one of the ones when I'm training funeral celebrants, when I was training funeral celebrants, it was one of the ones that, you know, really started to make them think about, you know, how powerful songs are and what their messages are. And, you know, there's some beautiful songs out there that are just amazing.
But the only thing is from once you listen to that song, it'll never have the same connection to what
but
it
that's
was
where
before.
that's where
But
it
that's
should
good, though.
be.
It should, yeah,
It
definitely.
should be that. Don't let it remind you of the sadness of the funeral.
No.
Let it remind you of the person.
Yeah.
But the one song, if I could get one song banned from every possible funeral, it would have to be Angel.
Yeah.
You know, because it is, you know, I say to people, have you listened to the story? Oh, yes, in the arms of the angels, I will fly away. What's the rest of the song about?
I have no idea.
It is a song about a prostitute who wants to take her own life in a hotel room. So from this stark, lonely hotel room and the endlessness that I feel. And it's, you know, and I'm pulled from the wreckage and there's vultures and thieves at my back. Is that your mum?
No.
You know, but all they hear, it's
arms
like
of an angel.
time to say goodbye. Time to say goodbye is the same. If you listen to the English words of that, you would never use it in a funeral.
No.
You know, but because it's in Italian and then it says time to say
goodbye.
goodbye so beautifully, everybody has it, you know?
Yeah.
So it brings a whole thing, Look, we could talk for hours, you know, you and me together, like that's just fatal.
What do you think? I mean, you've written a lot of verses and poetry over your career. What do you find inspires you to do that?
I personally don't think that I write them. I think that I get given the words to write them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll look at them and go,
No,
that's pretty bloody good.
Better keep that.
I just, so I've published 2 books of funeral poetry and verses, and I've published a book of beginnings and endings, so which open and close a funeral. But it's I just sit there and let the words come to me, and I can't remember them. And in fact, when I was training some funeral celebrants over in Perth, I was talking about this, you know, bloke poetry is very hard to come by. Mm-hmm. And in Perth, it's a very male-dominated city.
Yeah.
You know, they have a lot of FIFO workers and all that sort of stuff. And so I started saying, I've got this poem that I wrote, and it's just a knock-around bloke with a heart of gold. You kept us amused with the stories you told. You bent the rules occasionally, but nothing you did break. I can't remember the rest. And they all joined in and said it off by heart. And I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I wrote it. I can't remember it. And they finished the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because they use it so often, because there's so few poems about men and, you know, particularly those that have maybe, you know, break the rules a bit and all that sort of stuff, you know. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
It's like the first time you see a book in a shop. I saw it in Darwin, and I'm like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
book is in the shelf in Darwin. Like, I had imagined that it was in my suburbs.
Yeah.
That's all,
Yeah.
not nationally,
No,
or
no.
New Zealand.
No, that's
like
right.
it was
Yeah,
mind blowing.
yeah.
So.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you've got a verse or a poem there that you'd like to share.
I have.
Yeah.
So this poem is called "The Brightest Star," and I wrote it for someone who took their own life, and it was a tragic circumstance, but I just kind of thought I just wanted to give the message that I thought that they may have been trying to say. So it says, "With no dark clouds surrounding me, I can only see sunshine ahead. Although I will miss you so terribly, I do regret what has been left unsaid. If I could have said goodbye to all of you, especially those I love so much, I would have, but I felt I had to leave without a loved one's touch. You may never understand my reasons, but for me, I really had to go. What breaks my heart is that I may have hurt you. I beg that this isn't so. I loved you all beyond limits. There are not enough words to say, but I get that I'm not there, so it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yet the words I leave you with now are the ones that mean the most, you see. I ask you to forgive what I've done. This is really important to me. Live your lives to the full, look after my family, I beg you from afar. Then look to the night sky, I'll be there shining from a star. I'll be the biggest and brightest thing in the sky. I'll shine for you, you'll see for sure. So when the heartache comes, just go for a walk. I'll be right outside your door. My light and my love will never dim, on this you can always rely. No matter where you are in the world, you'll see me as the brightest star in the sky."
Oh, that is a very, very beautiful verse, and for those people that have ever lost anyone from them taking their own life, and to be able to reflect back on that, that is a beautiful verse there, definitely. Wow, yeah.
Chris, you're lost for words.
I
That is
am.
not you.
I know. It's like, I don't know what else to say. Maybe some crickets. It's very unusual, but yeah, no, that is absolutely brilliant. Like Robyn said, we could probably talk for hours and days and days and days on what it's like to be in a role of being a funeral celebrant, plus all the other things that you do. And we are absolutely, truly blessed to be able to be a part of people's lives, even if it's only for a very short period of time. And I often say to a lot of my families is, or if I'm conducting a service, is think about how, blessed and honoured we were to be a part of that person's life, and same back to them. When we're born, we have no idea of where our direction's going to be, who we're going to meet, who we're going to. It's already planned out, I guess, in a sense. But on the other side, it's we make things how we want it to be too. You have that ability to make change. You have choice. You have choices.
David Kessler wrote a beautiful thing he wrote a book with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and in it he
Say
says...
that 5 times.
He said, we're not the same to each person we love, each person we meet, each person we know, and each person we briefly meet. Yeah. And that is true.
Oh, it is.
Like we are all, like you are Chris to me, the funeral director, the celebrant, the whatever. Yeah. But you're somebody completely different to your family. Yeah. And so we all know people, and that's why funerals are really important. People think that, these days you just go and get cremated and then have a get-together afterwards. No. Funerals are a really important part of the grieving process.
You've got to celebrate people's lives. You can either have the funeral that's morbid and dull and boring, or you celebrate it. Yeah. And be it if they've only been here for 2 minutes or 150 years, it doesn't matter. We still give our loved ones the same care, be it if they're early life or older life. Yep. It's just a different time frame that you're working with. And the period of time that they've been exposed to all of us. So I know over my 23 years of being in the industry, the amount of funerals you've done for me and our families, and the feedback and everything else like that has been, I don't have enough words to describe it. But to say we're privileged to have known you. I'm not saying that you're dead now, but that sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it?
I've got mine planned.
And now you're gone.
No, I've got mine planned. I've told my husband I want rent crowd.
Yeah.
I want wailing women. I want everything.
Yeah.
Maybe wailing
bring
men.
it out.
I don't. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's as I say to families when I'm going, I say, in the nicest way, I hope I don't see you again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's, people are actually dying to meet me. I know
That's
that.
right.
We've heard all those jokes
Oh, and
before.
I didn't even have the drum. I've got that here somewhere. I can do this. Yeah.
But it's true. You just say, look, I hope I don't see you again because I know that it's going to be sad.
Yeah.
I know that it's going to be a sad occasion.
It's so true.
And, I've got a funeral family that I've done 7 funerals for,
Holy
and
crap.
5 of them were over 90.
Yeah.
But when they got to the next generation and, I started doing the next generation, that was kind of like, no, I've had it. No, I don't want to do this with you anymore. And one of the people said, oh, it wouldn't be a family funeral without you.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
How privileged
Yeah,
are
definitely,
we?
definitely.
How privileged are
Yeah.
we?
You're in the back, you're there, but they know that you're there. And that's the thing. That's what I find about our role that we play as funeral directors and celebrants is how warm the reception is when we go out and see that family again, and just the conversations and there's no pompous ceremony.
And I love doing the spouse or whatever because you remember them.
That's right.
Describing their loved one to you, and you remember their expressions and stuff like that. It's
now
just
you've
beautiful.
like we said, the honour and privilege to be able to do that for them. So no.
So one of the families who requested me, I was going overseas.
Yeah.
And
how inconvenient.
They said she's going to be away for a while, and the lady said, just put me on ice until she gets back.
Yeah, I'll wait. So
she lasted another year.
No. Well, I think that'll do us for today. And I'd like to thank Robyn for coming in and telling us a little bit about your role that you play as a funeral celebrant. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to hopefully more podcasts with you down the track. There'll be plenty more topics that we could be here for years.
Oh, we could. But until we're old and grey, hang on, we already are.
I'll go get the new lax. The next ad is for new lax. So, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for everyone that's listened, I hope you've enjoyed it. Go and check out our socials, Bremba Family Funerals, Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.